Welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and even though it's almost February, we still have our Christmas tree up. This chat is with Matt Fernandes, who is the co-founder and chief creative officer of Industrial Brothers, an animation studio here in Toronto. What's interesting about Industrial Brothers is that Matt creates the IPs for the shows they produce, and as of now, they have 7 original series under their belt that are broadcast all over the world. In our chat, Matt is going to reveal how he came up with their latest series, Dino Ranch, which just premiered on Disney this month, from the original sketch he drew to the path he took to develop the pitch Bible with his team, the pilot episode, and even where the funding comes from upon Greenlight. So now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. How's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat about Dino Ranch, your new preschool 3D fun-looking show with dinosaurs and Wild West, which looks like my childhood dream.
Awesome. I know. Me too.
Yeah. Well, let's chat a little bit about you first. So, I saw you went to OCAD, and then there was a couple of years in between, and then suddenly you're the co-founder of a pretty renowned studio in Toronto. So maybe you can just tell me about who you are and how that happened.
It happens just like that. I don't know. Where do you want me to start? I guess, the journey from being an artist,
born at 5 pounds and 3 ounces.
That's right. Going from an art student to owning a company and an animation studio, I don't know. It's such a journey. It's such a path, and how I got here, sometimes I have no idea. It sort of started, my whole history is I've been doing kids entertainment and been in the arts for my whole life. And it started with my family, all of them are artists, and all of them have worked in the kids business. And my grandfather, his name was Craig Flessel, and he was a comic book artist for DC Comics in the 30s. So he did like the first 25 covers of Detective Comics, and his big claim to fame, he did a character called the Sandman. And so he's a brilliant artist. And so when I was a kid growing up, I used to sit in his studio and we used to do comic books together, and he was amazing. And my mother is a children's book author, illustrator named Matthew Fernandes. And she's done maybe 200 children's books now. And my dad had an animation studio in New York and worked for Sesame Street. And my sister does children's books, so I have no choice. It's the only thing. If I were to be a lawyer, I'd be going against the family business. So
that's the opposite of most people. They're like, everybody else is doctors and lawyers, and I'm in animation.
Yeah. So, well, the thing is I grew up realizing, for me, being an artist was a job, right? So I got to, it was, it felt normal. So I think for some people, exactly. The idea of being an artist, you're going to be a starving artist, or seems so absurd that could be a job. But for me, that was the family business, and everybody's still working. My grandfather's not around anymore, but I go home and everybody's got projects. My mom's, late 70s, still doing books, and so it's sort of the family language. So for me, it wasn't even just about school. It was just, that was sort of what I was born into. So it kind of started there. And then how do I become a company owner is another journey. But I ended up, I went to school, but I had always wanted to be a filmmaker and a storyteller. And I always wanted to sort of get into, television and movies so, I kind of just put my focus on that. And when I saw at the time, I remember I was trying to work in, doing work in features, doing storyboarding and the odd jobs. But then, Pixar came out with, I think, The Incredibles. And I was like, that is the thing I want. I was like that. I realized I was like, that's it. But how do you go from, being an artist to being, making your own projects or making your own show or making your own film? I realized the only way to do it is to do it, right? The only way to do it is to actually come up with something and create something and kind of create a world. And and pitch it and have somebody see that world and go, I'm going to put money down on, I'm going to bet on this. And that's really what it is. You're presenting a universe or a character or a take that people with money go, I will invest in that. And how do you convince people to do that? And really part of it is coming down to really, learning how to not only create a show, but pitch a show and pitch it to the right people. And that's a long journey. That's a long journey. And a lot of that is finding the right people and building those networks and building those relationships and finding those moments. And it's a little bit of luck, right? You have to have the right concept, the right story, the right thing at the right time, and you got to meet the right people. And so there's a little bit of luck involved. So for me to kind of go from artist to company owner, that luck sort of started when I was 19 years old. I was on a bus in Portugal, and I met my business partner. I didn't know he was going to be my business partner back then. We were both backpacking through Portugal, and he's from Australia. And he's older than I am. And we randomly met, and we were like instant buddies, and we just traveled around Europe for like weeks, and we always stayed in touch. And he was a business guy, so we had always stayed in touch. Like once a year he would call me at 4 a.m. or something like that, just to wake me up, and we'd always stay in touch. And as I was starting to get into television and getting into creating shows, he was building a business out in Australia. And I had just finished my first show that I ever created, called Dex Hamilton, old show. And I was done. I didn't know what to do then. And we were talking, and he had just sold his business, and we were like, hey, let's start a company. Let's do something. And that's literally how it started. This was like, 20 some odd years later. We randomly just said, let's make stuff. And we've been doing that for the last, 11 years. And so a little bit of luck, right? Like if had I not taken the 12 o'clock bus in Portugal at 19, we wouldn't be here. And so it's funny the decisions that we think it's always the big decisions that we make in our lives that are going to change everything, but it's really just the small little nuances of bus schedules that could just take your life in a different direction. And so the long story short is, that it kind of went from artist to business owner, just sort of through, a general idea, but a little bit of luck and the right people that kind of come along and help support. So.
That's pretty incredible. Just a quick question. You said the first show that you did, was that actually in production, or is that a pitch you put together?
That was, so the first show I ever did was called Dex Hamilton, Alien Entomologist. I had no idea what I was doing. This was, forever ago, like 11, 12 years ago. It's a weird show, but it was the first, I had no idea how to make a show, but I had put together it really, I had spent, I think I was out of school. Didn't really know what to do. I was doing children's books and illustration and artwork, but, sort of to go, how do I get from here to being, I don't know, Brad Bird, or how do I do that? How does anybody do that? And so I had saved a bit of money. I took about 6 months off, and I just said, I'm going to just focus on one idea. I had this idea for this character that was like the crocodile hunter in outer space. It was like this sort of, futuristic entomologist. It was this weird idea. But I really saw it. I really believed in it. And so I just sat down and built a Bible, like a show Bible. I really worked out, all the characters, all the character arcs, the universe, the rules, the visuals. I had put together pitches and this was just all out of instinct. I had created like big toy figurines. I was like pitching toy lines, and really what I was doing instinctually was I was creating a brand, right? I was and more than just a television show. or more than just, a single story. I was thinking about a brand, something that could work. Oh, this would make a great comic book, could make a great video game, would make a good toy line and make a great show. And then I just went out and I pitched it. And the other part of this story is one of my oldest friends, who is also our head of production, our VP of production at Industrial Brothers, named Tammy Seaman. And she and I had met when I was 21 years old. And she was working in animation and producing. And I just kind of bumped into her and she's like, oh, my boss is looking for a new show. And I was like, I just happened to be working on something. She's like, you should come in and pitch it. And so I literally went, met, and the company was named March Entertainment. They're not in business anymore. And the owner was named Dan Hawes. And we sat down and had lunch. And we're sitting in this restaurant and I had built this giant iron box and pretended it was sent from the future. And I put it on this table. And it was like, and I was pulling all this stuff out. And by the end of it, I had sold the show. He's like, let's make it. And so next thing I know, I was making a show. I had no idea how to make a show. But we were making it. We were, and it was, it is what it is. It's forever ago, but it was that I was learning how to make a TV show literally by making a TV show.
I mean, that's
made a lot of mistakes and whatever, but I learned a lot. And so that's kind of how I got into the TV business.
So maybe let's jump ahead and talk about Dino Ranch. You've got all this experience under your belt now. You've got the studio, you've pitched a bunch of shows, you've made a lot of shows. What is the secret formula and who's Dino Ranch for that you've kind of learned over the years?
I don't know what the secret formula is. I think first of all, you have to be really passionate about your whatever it is that you're doing, right? If you're not passionate and you don't believe in it and you don't see it clearly, nobody else can, right? You have to be kind of crystal clear and sort of what you're seeing, because everybody's got to jump on that vision, right? That's the North Star from investors to crew. And so that's kind of the secret, is to really believe in what you're doing and really believe and really be be passionate, because passion is contagious. And so that's the only secret I have to all of this. But in terms of Dino Ranch,
what gives you passion for Dino Ranch? So as a practical example.
So for me, I grew up in the country. My whole family's from New York, and my parents moved to out in the sticks in Canada. They moved to Canada, and we grew up just sort of out in farm country. And so I grew up around a lot of farms and the outdoors and a lot of cows and horses, and all my friends kind of were like sort of farmer country kids. And the one thing I realized about farms and country life is that kids were super capable. They lived this sort of rough and tumble life. They were like 8 years old, driving tractors, smoking cigarettes, they were really like these outdoor rough and tumble sort of ranch kids. And so I always wanted to do a ranch story. And also my grandmother, her favorite show was Bonanza, and she lived in the Bronx, which is weird, but she loved Bonanza. And so I always wanted to do a big sweeping ranch drama. I just thought there's so much storytelling but what I realized about a ranch and a farm and all of that, or the wild frontier, is you're only as successful as your family, right? The stronger the family unit, the stronger the ranch, the stronger the farm. So family is really important. And if your family's not aligned, your ranch is not aligned. And so I always thought that was a really strong theme. And then I thought, well, geez, you throw dinosaurs in there and you got a hit. But I realized, so I wanted to do that thematically. And then, of course I loved, Jurassic Park and the idea of taking care of dinosaurs and looking after dinosaurs and sort of that, that was such an inspiration. And then I sort of mashed them together. But the short answer is I just drew a kid on a dinosaur and I thought that looks cool. And then I drew another kid on a dinosaur and I thought, well, that looks really cool too. And so it was literally while all of that was sort of, in my mind and themes I wanted to do, it really came down to just really one strong drawing. And all of those kids are they have not changed. I drew like in a few days, I just drew these, 3 kids on 3 dinosaurs, and that's exactly what's on screen now. And so when you sit down and, for me, a lot of it just starts with drawing. As I'm drawing, I start thinking about who are these characters and what's the world and what's the story. And so yeah, I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of hit this tone, this pitch, and then everyone just sort of got it, right? It's Dino Ranch. Like you go, oh, I get it. Like that's
right
that's
away, 2 words.
It's all in the title, right? So that, I mean, that's kind of how it started.
So okay, so you mentioned a few things. You mentioned, you've really got to have the passion yourself and all this other stuff. So when you're approaching broadcasters, like it just premiered on Disney, I believe.
Yeah.
And every studio out there is approaching the Disneys and the Cartoon Networks, et cetera.
Yeah.
What is the selling features that Disney said, yes, we want to pick this up, opposed to everything else?
Yeah. I mean, well, we have really, at Industrial Brothers, we have really great partners called Boat Rockers Studios. And so together we work as a team. So we run all the creative and the production, and, they run all the financing and the distribution and the business side of things. And it's a really great relationship. So, in terms of contacts, we really, what makes the partnership so great is that, Boat Rocker has deep relationships with all the broadcasters, and we have deep relationships with the broadcasters. And so that's something that you start building over some time. But there's markets that anyone can go to that called like Kid Screen, which is a market out in Miami, or you have like MIPCOM, which is out in France, in Cannes. And these are big conventions where you get every broadcaster in the world coming. You've got all the studios, creators. People go and they pitch their shows, and you set up these meetings, and you can do it through the delegates. You can find and try to pitch, so it's this frenzy markets, where creators and studios and everyone is pitching, and so that's kind of how we started to build relationships with all our broadcasters, and we had done quite a few shows before. Like I created, and we did a show called Top Wing on Nickelodeon. And so, we had a good track record of shows that we started to make. And so we did made a trailer. So did an animated trailer, worked out the Bible, but really wanted to just pitch the tone and the vibe, but really just thought if we can just nail it in this trailer, animated trailer, we can kind of just show them, just show them the world. And so we showed them the trailer, we pitched it. And generally how some of these, pitches work is, especially with Disney, is, you get like 30 Disney executives from all around the world, all kind of come in and sit in a room, and you just have to stand there and sell. You've got like 15 minutes before they're off to the next, and you got to sell it. And I think I played them the trailer, I did the pitch, dead silence. Everyone was like, oh, thank you very much. And then they leave, and you're like, I hope they like it. And then, and then all of a sudden you get offers, and people are like, we're very excited. And so that in a nutshell is it is, you use these markets to sort of get in front of broadcasters. So anybody, young creators, I would look at, Kid Screen is a great market to try to get in there and get in front of people. And that's how we started. Nice. We would go to these markets and just try to meet people. So
I'm wondering if you can bring to light a few more details in the in-between time. So obviously you've funded this trailer and the Bible through your Industrial Brothers and your partnership with Boat Rocker. So you have funding through them, and then when you get an offer from Disney, what does that offer say? Like, we will totally fund this if you make it exclusive to us, or we'll put up 25%, and then you have to go to other broadcasters and pre-sell it. Like, what is that?
Yeah,
because not a lot of people know about this, especially for people who want to create. It's very confusing.
That's exactly how it works. You get a message from Disney saying, "We will totally fund this."
$10 million, right?
I mean, how you fund and put together and cobble the financing for a show together. There's just so many different ways to do it. There's so many paths, and that's, for me, that's not my expertise, and that's why we really rely on Boat Rocker. They're so great at that. But with Disney, for us, it's not exclusively Disney. So they've licensed the show, so it plays on in the U.S. and globally. It's in different territories, but there's different, like in Germany, it's on Super RTL, which is which is the big network, the big kids network in Germany. And so what you do is you have a sales team that go around globally and sort of have relationships with, there's broadcasters that, in all over Africa and Latin America and Russia and China. And there's so many, we always think of just like, the pillars, like Disney or Nickelodeon and globally, but there's so many different, and in Canada, it's here on CBC, which are amazing partners and have always supported us. And so it is a Disney show in certain territories, but it's it's a CBC show here in Canada. But Disney's were the first ones to jump in, and we developed it with them. And so it's on the business side, it's like I don't know, it's sort of like Minority Report. You're just sitting there putting together these puzzles and financing, and that, for me, that's an art within itself. And so it's and so that's part of, you can't just do it alone, right? Like, so as an artist, you need to partner with, my business partner, Arthur, is he focuses really on the business strategy and the financing and the selling, and which allows me to sort of focus just on the creative and the making of the shows.
So I'm still thinking about this process. So maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Your strategy is to find a big broadcaster to develop it with. So they kind of put in money to develop it, and then that gives backing to go to other broadcasters and say, we have Disney on board, we're developing this show. Can we sell this to you too? And then when you have enough people on board and you have, I don't know, 100% of your goal of funding, then you start. Then you started.
Yeah. So depending on how it works, so certain networks might come in for a certain percentage of the budget. They may come in for 50%. They may come in for 70%. Some might come in for 10%. But they say, yes, we'll come in, and you develop it, and the development process can take, some years. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 6 months. Once you kind of get it to a point where they're very happy with it, then you get the green light, right? And but you might get a green light, but you still have to bring in a certain amount of financing to the table, which means you might have to get international sales, right? So you might get a network in France to come in, and you might get one in Australia to come in, and then you kind of get all the financing together. Or a network can come in, they can own the brand completely and then finance it all together. So it's definitely different. There's different paths, and there's not one way to skin a cat. So and it's changing all the time. You're getting SVODs and streamers and different players, and the landscape is always changing. So everything is always changing. Business models always change, but the thing that doesn't change are good concepts, right? So the key is just concept is king. Have a really good, strong idea. You don't have to know how everything works, but if you have a really strong idea, people will come to that and support it. And that's really the number one thing, is just have a really strong idea.
So say I'm a creator and I have a pitch and it's really strong, and I'm getting attention for it and whatnot. What would you advise? Because you also talked a lot about having really good partners to work with who can figure out the financing and stuff. So say I go to Disney with my independent idea and they're like,
Yeah.
great, we will develop it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. What do I do next?
Yeah. So my suggestion, it's really hard to say, I'm a creator and just to get in front of Disney. Generally what you want to do is a great path is to go to a production company. So for example, an Industrial Brothers. So you go to a production company that is a production company and that has all these relationships and resources and knows how to put together a show. That's really the starting point and that's a little bit more accessible, wherever you live. There's probably animation studios and companies all over the world that you can find and get in front, try to get in front of and pitch to their, you find their head of development and try to pitch them a show. And generally then you can sort of develop it with them, and then they can kind of take it to a broadcaster. So my first show, I partnered with, March Entertainment. I had no idea what I was doing, but they had made shows and they were a real studio. And because you can go to a Disney and go, hey, I've got this great idea, but they're like, yeah, but how are you going to make it? So, and you can't really go, I don't know. So, you got to bring something to the table. Or, you can have a great idea and a company can just say, oh, well, we'll take that. We'll purchase that idea and then they'll make it. So.
Nice. Cool. Maybe as we're wrapping up the chat a little bit, I'm wondering, what is the kind of the long-term plan for your co-owner of Industrial Brothers? And you've taken us through the whole pitch process and you've been doing this for a number of years. What is the long-term plan, I guess, for Dino Ranch? Because you mentioned about brand building and toys and things like that. And then also, when thinking back to your dream of telling stories and making art, what is your long-term plan with your personal dream and Industrial Brothers? Kind of two parts.
They're kind of tied a little bit. I mean, obviously with Dino Ranch, the plan is global domination. But we, really hope that, I honestly, it's such a joy. It's such a pleasure. It's a real privilege to just get to make cartoons for kids and make art for a living. And I don't think there's a day that goes by where I take that for granted. So the goal is just to continue to do that, and hope that people still want to make the things you want to make and want to, work with you and collaborate with you, because it's such a huge collaboration. I think that, really, really excited about Dino Ranch. I think it's such a huge world to explore. I really feel like, I really hope that kids engage with it and like it. And, especially now everybody's trapped inside and can't go out and we're all feeling really stuck. Hopefully kids get to see, these kids out in the open range riding dinosaurs in this big open world where it's rough and tumble. And we feel that that's a really, that's a white space right now. And so hopefully kids kind of, gravitate towards that. I hope they do. But, and for us at Industrial Brothers, we've got a lot of exciting projects in production right now that are coming out. And the goal for us is just to keep making more, right? Just really try to make the best work that we can. Hopefully you make work that resonates. And not only as a company goal, just as a personal goal, because in the end of the day, outside of a company, I'm just still a kid with a sketchbook. And if I can keep doing that until I'm old and dead, that's the goal. Last story, but my grandfather, prolific, amazing artist. I remember he was about 97 when I went and saw him. And we'd always, when I was a kid, we would sit down and we'd both draw together, right? Or I'd draw something and I'd push it over to him and he would draw. And so art was sort of our bond. And I remember seeing him at 97 and he was showing me what he was working on. And he was going, I'm still trying to make it simpler. He's like, and he was looking at it and he was still trying to crack this nut. He was still trying to figure it out. He was still just thoroughly engaged at that age. And so if I can do that, if I can still be trying to work it out, trying to and engage, then I win. So for me, that's the goal.
Nice. I like that a lot. And it sounds like a struggle and a passion at the same time.
It always is.
Well, what is there anything else you wanted to share in the final moments?
No, I just say, I would say to anybody listening, that art is a job, and it's a real thing. And there's never been a greater time to have ideas and have, content and to create and a great idea can change your life. It just takes one, right? It just takes one. And trust me, I got a lot of bad ones, but every once in a while I'll get a good one. And with that, you can kind of change the direction of your life. So don't give up on your craft and don't give up coming up with ideas.
Amazing last words. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast chat. Matt, it's been a pleasure to chat. And if you're listening and you want to reach out to Industrial Brothers or Matt or follow their work or see Dino Ranch, you can do so by checking out their website. And I'll include that in the description of this chat. And that's all for now. Thanks so much for listening. Okay, bye.